each of the votes. So just bear with us for another few minutes. If you have any handouts in which you wish for the board to review, it'd be appropriate at this time to give them to the staff so we can get those disseminated, so we don't have to stop the meeting to review information. All right, thank you. Good afternoon. Let's call the Board of Adjustment to order. First, let me announce that all decisions of the board are final. If there's anyone aggrieved by the decision of this board, they may appeal to circuit court within 15 days of the board's decision. Also, no permits or license can be issued until that 15-day appeal period is expired or no appeal has been filed. For information regarding the board's decision or an appeal to circuit court, the Office of Land Use Administration will be your contact. As you come to the podium, address the board, not to others in the audience or to the staff. And I would ask that if you have an electronic device, you turn it off or silent at this time so we don't have a disturbance. And a reminder to all the board members to turn your mic on when making a statement or a motion. All right, we have, it appears 6 here, so we'll call the roll call. Mr. Davis?
Here.
Mr. Coleman?
Here.
Mr. Metcalf?
Here.
Mr. Burrows?
Here.
Mr. Milling? Absent. Mr. Golden?
Here.
And I'm William Guess. So we have a quorum. We have to have 5 to approve a motion or to affirm a motion for it to pass under the supernumerary or the majority requirements. And we have Mr. Anderson here as our attorney as representative. All right, we'll go in order. And as we call your case, if you'll come down to the podium and give us your name and address, starting with 6135, 6136, 6137. This is the 451, 457 Dolphin Island Parkway address. Looks like there's a few other streets involved here, but
I'm Dennis McLeod. Address is 1420 Regency Oaks Drive West. This is my agent, Tim Spafford.
okay. Your address, name and address as well, sir.
Tim Spafford, 1263 Lake Circle West.
Okay, this was held over at the last meeting so that I guess you could provide additional information.
And we had a review with the Planning Commission.
The Planning Commission has reviewed it, or you do have one coming up?
They did review it.
Okay, and
the Planning Commission approved plan unit development, subdivision, and rezoning that was submitted before them. But the board still has to consider the surfacing variance of allowing aggregate as well as buildings within the setback and then parking backing into the right-of-way.
okay. Well, let's look at this. Have you seen the staff's recommendations?
Yes, sir, we're okay with the staff recommendations, but we do have one question.
Okay. Proceed.
Bert, previously you had mentioned the barbed wire fence adjacent to the residential property.
Yes, that was pointed out in the Planning Commission meeting. Barbed wire is not allowed by the zoning ordinance on single-family residential property. And this property and then this property here are both single-family residential properties that are part of the planned unit development and that are before the board for a use variance request. And during the Planning Commission meeting, it was pointed out that they would need to request a separate variance to allow barbed wire on the fences, or they could have a fence going up to 8 feet in height without barbed wire.
Okay.
And because of legal notification requirements, since they haven't actually asked for the barbed wire as part of any of their previous requests, this would be a new application they'd have to submit.
Bert, what about the barbed wire fence being noted on the drawing when the application was submitted? Would that not count?
No, it has to be part of a specific request, and it wasn't advertised that way for the public to review.
Mr. Chairman,
Proceed, Mr. Metcalf.
so we could not approve that as part of our conditions, could we do that without a separate application? No? Okay, thank you.
Okay. Any questions of the board for the applicant? Or the applicant's rep?
Yeah, Mr.
Coleman?
Chair.
Proceed.
Did I understand you, Bert, to say that an additional thing could be to raise the height of the fence to 8 feet as opposed to barbed wire?
Yes, where they are not allowed by right to have the barbed wire on the residential properties, they could have a privacy fence of increased height up to 8 feet, which is allowed by the zoning ordinance.
Okay.
You know, if they wish to make a new application for the barbed wire on the residential property, you know, they would then be able to do perhaps an 8-foot high fence with the barbed wire on top down the road.
I have a
Do
question.
you understand the requirement? Do you understand what you can do?
I do have a question. Bert, what are the limits of the fence we're talking about? My understanding is it's just where the commercial use of the property borders residential property not owned by the owner. Is that correct?
If you're proposing to have barbed wire on the back of the property here that is owned by your client along this property line, and then along this property line, or along the back of that house that's also owned by your client, it would seem that that would be part of your variance request, to allow barbed wire on the residential properties, because the ordinance specifically says not allowed on residential property.
Okay.
This is my neighborhood. I live in this neighborhood. And there are a lot of kids, there are playgrounds there. There's a possibility of them coming and climbing, trying to get into it just to see what's there. I would be opposed to any barbed wire going in there, but I would support an 8-foot fence that wouldn't be as hazardous to the kids if something like that should happen.
Well, the barbed wire fence, it's a privacy fence to 6 feet, and then 3 or 4. It's there now, so that's the thing.
Any further questions of the board for the applicant? All right, is there anyone in the audience in favor of this application wishes to speak at this time? Anyone in opposition? Okay, we have none for the record. All right, comments of the board? In addition to Mr. Coleman?
I have one more comment.
Yes.
Previously, there were 4 letters submitted from surrounding property owners in favor, and those were submitted for the record last time, I believe, Bert.
Yes, and I did email them prior to the previous Board of Adjustment meeting to the board members.
Refresh my memory again. What exactly are you going, how are you going to use this property?
It is a commercial business, Coast Safe and Lock. They do hardware, they do hollow metal doors and frames, storefront, security, overhead doors. So it's a business occupancy, and they have there's actually 4 buildings, but it's basically one building facing Dauphin Island Parkway. And they have the building in the back that they use for fabricating hollow metal doors and frames. And then they have their service trucks and trailers and employee parking within the fenced area.
Do you intend on keeping the 2 residentially listed structures? Will all the structures remain?
As of right now. And the 2 residential properties were not re-subdivided into the commercial property, but they were included as part of the PUD, so he could use the rear section of both residential properties for employee parking. And
That's why I asked what the
yeah,
long-term intent is for those 2 structures. If they're going to remain, or will they go away, and then you have, you know, parking or some other use of that area? The 2 structures that are listed as residential in our drawings.
one faces Antoine Street and the other faces Duncan Street.
Correct.
Yes.
Okay.
Most of these variances and the previous planning commission requests were to correct things that were done in the past and get it all square, you know, get it all up to date with the city.
Okay, well, it appears we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 variances, right, that we're considering. And I'm just trying to kind of refamiliarize myself. First one's use, to use it for commercial and in a R1 district, single-family residential.
Using the back side of both properties for
Correct.
employee parking, yes, sir.
Okay, so you got residential structures, but you're going to not use them for residential purposes.
The owner leases those buildings for people to live in, so
Oh,
they're
you
still
will use them
used.
for residential?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And then the front setback, well, 2 existing buildings, but that's, like you said, they're already existing.
Yeah.
Tree planting,
Now, Mr. Chairman, with the tree planting, the Planning Commission approved the planting of 14 trees as depicted on the plan that should be in your books and on the screen. With the removal, they had shown 4 trees at this corner proposed, and the Planning Commission approved the removal of one of the proposed trees so that 14 trees would be planted on the site and 14 trees could be donated to the tree bank.
okay, so they'll meet the intent,
So the tree planting variance is not required.
okay? Landscaping, no additional landscaping for the single-tenant commercial site, B3. In the surface aggregate and maneuvering. So help me understand why the surface, why aggregate versus a paved surface?
The aggregate surface is existing.
Okay,
And with the trucks coming and going, it's just,
These
they don't
are-
have a maintenance problem with it right now, and so we're just asking for approval for what is there to remain.
what size trucks are we talking about?
They,
Flatbeds, large?
they have deliveries with tractor trailers
Okay.
sometimes.
All right, I have no further questions. Once again, any questions of the board? All right, Chair, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chair, I vote for approval, subject to recommendations of the staff.
Okay, do I have a second?
Second.
Have a second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Thank you, gentlemen. All right, next application is 6142 Mobile Area Water and Sewer Service, 1600 Shelton Beach Road Extension.
My name's Jimmy Rogers, 4279 Taurus Drive, Mobile, Alabama. I'm with McCory and Williams Engineering, representing Moss in the use variance request. We would like to agree with staff recommendations and request a holdover, please.
Okay. Any questions of the board for the applicant? Applicant's requesting or representative's requesting a holdover at the staff's recommendation. All right, anyone in the audience that was here either in favor or opposition of this application? Okay, we have none for the record.
And Mr. Chairman, I would like to point out, if I may, that we did receive an email, I believe it was late last week, that included a copy of the easement agreement between Moss and Crown Properties. So we do have a copy of the legal agreement between the two. And what we could do, if the board were willing to do this, is that if Crown were willing to submit a letter that we could have as part of the file saying that they agree to the Board of Adjustment application, then the board may be able to conditionally approve their request subject to that submittal.
Yeah, I've seen in the file, I think you already have the legal documentation as required. All right, are you in favor of us proceeding, sir?
Yes, sir. Could you repeat? I didn't quite understand.
Since we have received a copy of the agreement between Moss and Crown Properties for the cross-access easement, we would need additionally a letter from Crown Properties authorizing the application to the board, so that the board could tentatively approve the request subject to receiving that letter from Crown.
I got you. Sure. Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a question. In reviewing this application, is this a permanent arrangement or is this a short-term?
Yes, sir. It will be a permanent. It will be a permanent site.
Because sometimes these lay-down areas or contract areas are temporary.
No, this will be permanent.
Okay. Based on your changing to, you would like for us to go ahead and proceed if
Yes, sir, if the
possible?
board-
Conditional?
Right. Correct. Yes, sir.
All right. Any questions of the board for the applicant? Okay. Once again, is there anyone in the audience either in favor or opposition? Okay. Chair, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, offer a motion for approval pending written authorization.
Okay, I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Second. Any further discussion? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Save you a trip back down here. Application 6143, 5663, Mobile Carnival Association. This is for 351, 355 Government Street.
Hey, good afternoon, gentlemen. I'm Jay Watkins with Maynard, Cooper & Gale, 11 North Water Street, Suite 24290, Mobile 36602, representing the applicant, Mobile Carnival Association. This is the property at the corner of Government and Claiborne Street. The Mobile Carnival Association leased this property from the City of Mobile starting back in 2004, 2005, when the Mobile History Museum moved out and moved to the old City Hall building. As a tenant, the Mobile Carnival Association installed about an 8-foot ornamental iron fence around the perimeter of the parking lot there at the corner of Claiborne and Government. And you'll note that there are emblems from various historical Mardi Gras organizations surrounding that site embedded into that fence. Last year, the Carnival Association purchased this property from the City of Mobile and is now owning and occupying not only that corner, but the museum itself, and has acquired the parking lot behind the museum, as well as some additional green space there at Church and Franklin. The application today is for a variance from the screening obligations under the DDD with respect to the 3-foot hedge. The Carnival Association enjoys the visibility that it has from Government Street and Claiborne Street. As you can see, that's the entrance to the museum and the entrance to the gift shop in the photograph behind you. There is a fair amount of screening through oak trees that are planted between the sidewalk and the right-of-way of Government Street, and we feel like the visibility that's there now is helpful to the Carnival Association's museum, and that the buffering that's there with the existing oak trees along Government does provide some visual assistance in softening the view of that parking lot. As a result, the Carnival Association has asked for this variance. We will continue to maintain the fence that is there and intend to extend the fence in a similar pattern along Franklin Street at the rear of the museum to tie it into the overall complex of the museum.
Okay. There's several pictures in the file. Do you folks wish to see the file? Okay.
Yeah.
Here, Mr. Burrows, go pass that down. All right, any questions for the applicant by the board? All right. Anyone in the audience wishes at this time speak in favor of the application? Anyone in opposition? All right, there are none for the record. This one seems to be a more frequent one as we get closer to this deadline on the, I thought we had a kind of an extension on that.
The council has moved the enforcement date to the end of May 2018.
Okay, so not much farther, just 6 months or. And from the new zoning, I don't see that this is changing. It appears to be. Correct. All right. How long has the fence been there again?
The fence was installed shortly after the Carnival Association obtained the lease. I don't know the exact date. I would say probably in the 07, 08 range. So it's been approximately 10 years that the fence has been there. I don't know if staff has a better understanding of when that was installed.
Was there some historical look that they were trying to, you know, with the wrought iron and such at the time this one was installed? Do you know?
I think it was a combination of the historic character as well as with the customization to bring the Mardi Gras theme to the forefront so that it would be included and people would know that there was some association or affiliation with this property and the Mardi Gras organizations.
Okay. All right, any comments of the staff, of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I'm reading here and I worry about precedent. And there's one sentence in here, reduce the visibility of parking lots so that they enhance rather than detract. And from the beauty and historic nature of downtown Mobile. And this certainly is a good looking fence. And so you hate to penalize that behavior, but I do worry about what we're setting ourselves up for in the future.
And this is the second application we've had, correct? Since this.
Yes, it is. So
The last one was approved, but it had a
3-foot masonry. 4-foot masonry? No, it had like a
2.5 foot
masonry.
with
It had been
vegetation.
there for a much longer period of time.
Yes. I'm not aware of any other applications that are pending, but I'm not going to be surprised to see more coming up.
Yeah.
And I would, Mr. Chairman, I would argue that we are a little bit differentiated from other properties in the sense that we do have an ornamental fence that has been designed to incorporate the themes of the Mardi Gras Museum into it. I'd also point out that during the carnival season, you'll note that there are bleachers and other improvements that are made along the frontage and in the parking lot itself. And so some of the screening obligations there could be impacted each year as those bleachers are installed and taken back down. I do appreciate the fact that y'all are looking at a precedent-setting situation here and have to look at each case on a case-by-case basis. But I would submit that this is a unique property and a unique location, having a special use affiliated with the museum.
I think one way to look at this is they've gone over above and beyond what the code requires. I mean, a 3-foot fence and hedge, and look at this as an 8 or 9 foot ornamental top of the line. I mean, it accomplishes what the code wants. I'm not saying you should approve it. I'm just saying that's one way to look at it, that it kind of goes up, look at the reasoning and the purpose of the code. This is a very attractive, from the street, a very attractive view.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
I think that the existing fence meets the spirit of the ordinance, and I move for approval.
Okay.
Have a second.
I have a motion with a second. Before we continue, I just want to make one statement. I like the fence. I think it does, as Mr. Anderson's state, kind of fit with what was intended. The only thing I can say about this property, there appears to be no landscaping. I mean, it's all paving. So kind of meet the intent of that, I would say try to incorporate some planters or something.
Yes, sir.
Because you have nothing but from concrete to asphalt all the way to your building. Anyway, I have a motion with a second. Any further comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Motion carries.
Thank you, gentlemen.
All right, application 6144, 5772, Image Designs, Inc. And this is 2010 West I-65 Service Road.
Andy
Name and
Nicholson,
address.
Image Designs, 5692, Highway 90 West in Theodore.
Okay, currently staff recommends for denial. Would you tell us why we ought to consider otherwise?
ASF Intermodal has leased approximately 8,000 square feet in there. They've moved their corporate office to Mobile. They've got 12 locations. And the way the ordinance is written, there's really no place for them to advertise. I don't think John had intended on this being a multi-tenant type structure when he built it. There's not a front door for every tenant that he has in there. And with what they've already done with the Health Spring and his own signs, there doesn't permitting-wise be allowed another signage on the building.
It appears, Bert, could they not have a pylon or monument sign in place of all these signs on the building?
No, I don't believe that they have one. That was mentioned.
Could they?
Oh, they could. They're allowed one freestanding sign, and then with tenant panels for each tenant, and then one tenant panel per tenant, or on the building, one wall sign.
Correct. So there's a way around this if...
Potentially,
Yeah,
yes.
I've been on the board long enough to remember when the Health Spring
Correct.
was added to the building, and there was some question about it, I think, at that time. All right. Any questions of the board for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chair, the sign that you proposed, and the one that's on the building now, is on the, it faces to the south side? It faces south? Of the building?
Well, Mr. Coleman, the Health South came in and got a variance. They have a sign here, and then they have one around the corner on the south side of the building. And the application before you today is to allow this company to have a second wall sign on the north side of the building here that faces the church that's to the north.
They are leasing that entire half of that second floor up there, the entire length of the building.
So how many signs does White Spur have on the building?
They have two.
And then Health Spring has two.
Yes.
And then now ASF is asking for one, right?
Well, they're asking for a total of two.
So we'd have 6 on this building.
Yes.
Well, we don't normally allow 6 on Walmart. They're 10 times as big.
If everybody had their own entrance door, there could be a dozen signs on this building.
Oh, I understand.
But it wasn't designed like that. It wasn't designed as and none of these are really retail. They're all professional.
Yeah, I understand.
Sir, buildings.
Thank you. Any questions for the applicant? Okay, anyone in the audience in favor of the application? Anyone in opposition? Okay, we have none for the record. Chair, entertain a motion. Well, having none, Chair makes a motion to deny. Do I have a second. Do I have any further questions, comments? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. Sorry, sir, it's been denied. Application 6145. This is 4670 Old Shell Road.
Chris Alvis, 4670 Old Shell Road.
All right, and yours has been recommended for denial as well. You want to tell us why we ought to consider otherwise?
In the report, staff report, it mentions that no hardship was represented. I feel like we did represent a hardship, primarily due to safety, due to the heavy traffic on Old Shell Road, and privacy. Also, there's a new sidewalk that was installed along Old Shell Road, which has increased foot traffic and which has significantly affected privacy and safety. And the traffic, as I mentioned, is significant along Old Shell. Another thing that I presented to you was 5 letters from direct neighbors.
Correct. Each of the members of the board should have a handout with 5.
Each one of those neighbors, interestingly enough, is a direct neighbor and has also been approved for a variance to build a wall. I presented 3 precedents, variance-related, just now when I showed up, each of which are within, one of them is my direct neighbor, the other one is my one-over neighbor, and then the third one, excuse me, is within 260 feet of my property, all of which have been approved for variance within the last couple of years and are identical to my application.
Okay. So the hardship is both from a safety and a privacy standpoint?
Yeah, in order to utilize that piece of property, the side lot, which is the major portion of the play area, let's call it, for the kids, if we were to stay within the requirements, it would cut that piece of property in half, that side lot, rendering it useless for anything, really. And so in order to utilize it for family use, I'm applying to have my wall along the property line.
What do you have along that area now?
Well, there used to be a large live oak which fell into Old Shell. Recently, it was removed by the city. And then there's some azalea bushes.
So you don't have any kind of existing fence?
Nope. Now, on 2 sides of the property, you'll see on that diagram, there's an existing 12 to 15 foot wall. Runs along the back, it's the other side of the property.
Is the wall yours or somebody else's?
That was built by the Taylor Complex.
Okay.
The Moorzette family. Which I have 2 letters from members of the Moorzette family as well.
Okay. Any questions of the board for the applicant?
Yeah, Mr. Chairman, I got one.
Mr. Burrows?
Are there any other 8-foot privacy fences in there, in that block you might say?
They're more width than without.
Hmm?
There are more width 8-foot privacy fences in that neighborhood than without.
It is?
Yes, sir.
Not on the front side. Mr. Wiggum in the back left, he got a side yard. Codina didn't have one, but he's no.
He's got approved, right?
Browning didn't have one.
Well,
I'm not,
by
more than width and south.
Okay.
There are some in there. There are some in there.
with the direct, right across the street from me has one, right next to the one across the street from me has one, across the street from me has one, adjoining 2 sides of my property has one. Every street on Marston, on my section of Marston has one except for Browning, although Browning has it on 3 sides from his other neighbors.
Are these on Old Shell?
Codina is, and the Taylor Complex is, and the ones across the street from me are.
How far off of the sidewalk will the fence be or the wall?
My property line is about 3 feet off the sidewalk.
So the wall will be 3 feet off of the
That's right.
sidewalk?
That's what I'm applying
You're
for.
wanting to put it right on the
That's correct.
property line?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question.
Proceed.
That stretch of Old Shell, leading, if you're heading west, is up, has fence, block. How tall are those? Do you know?
So the existing one in the Taylor Complex?
Right.
It ranges from 12 to 16 feet.
And are you yours is gonna be 8?
Mine's gonna be 8.
And how, is it gonna be in line with those? existing?
The Morzette compound is on, it's past the property line. It's on the sidewalk. Mine will actually be about 3 feet back from the sidewalk.
Thank you.
There appears to be a couple of trees that are notated on the photos. It says 24-inch poplar, 24-inch live oak, other existing trees. How are you going to address preserving the trees?
If I'm allowed to go on the property line, I'll be city side of those trees.
So you will be in the easement, is what you're saying?
No. If I am allowed on the property line, my property line, those trees will be inside my wall.
Okay. So you'll preserve the trees as part of your
That's
plan?
correct.
All right. Any further questions of the board?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Metcalf?
All that I've seen is it says it's a proposed masonry wall.
Yes.
Can you give me an idea what the aesthetics would be and what the construction would be?
We're going to match the feel of the existing Taylor compound wall, so it's going to be CMU with stucco.
Okay, so it won't be just exposed CMU or
That's
painted,
correct.
it'll
It's
be
gonna have stucco finish.
And there'll be a cap around it or
Similar to the Taylor compound, it just has a slight offset about like that.
Okay, thank you.
Any further questions? I like how you refer to it as a compound, because that sounds like what you're creating. Yeah. Each of you will have a compound from the other. Okay. Excuse me, anyone in the audience either in favor? Yes, sir. If you'll step aside and allow the gentleman to give his name and address and statement.
My name is Hodge Alvis, 1257 Selma Street. I'm the father of Chris and the grandfather of his kids, obviously. And I want to speak very definitely in favor of this wall. If you could put me back up the broad look at the whole neighborhood. As you come down Old Shell, you're all well familiar with the Morzette compound. For what, how many feet is that, Chris? 500?
Well, it's almost 2,000 feet around the whole property.
I know, but down Old Shell.
550.
550 feet of about a 12-foot wall that you come from downtown Mobile on Old Shell. And when you get to the end of their wall, you get to Chris's property. And it's that little nook in there. The Morzette wall goes down the east side of his property, across the north side of the property, goes all the way down to Marston Lane, then goes all the way back around. That's one thing. His fence will be essentially a continuation of something you've already approved. It would be nicer, though, because it will step back a few feet from the sidewalk and will give some green space. The Morzette's wall is right smack dab up on the sidewalk. Privacy. They did have big old live oak that got taken down by a storm. Y'all may remember when that limb came down on Old Shell. And granted, the city had to come in and take it out. But when they took out not just the live oak, but they took out a tremendous amount of very large, old bushes, pedesperums and other bushes like that. If you stand at his house and look at Old Shell right now, you see Old Shell. You didn't used to do that. There's a real privacy issue here with that sidewalk, because now the public is brought directly to his property. That didn't used to be a sidewalk. It used to be Old Shell and bushes. And you would have to walk along the side of Old Shell. Now you have a nice, very pretty, very attractive sidewalk, but brings the public right to his property. Safety. If I'm standing in that yard with the kid, I have to be almost holding the kid. If you stand in that yard and you look at Old Shell, you're looking at I-65 just about. They come by there lickety-split. Marston Lane goes into Old Shell. Now, if I'm visiting him, I'll come down Old Shell and I'll turn into Marston Lane. But I will never go out Marston Lane onto Old Shell. I go down Oakland and over to, Ridge Lawn, and I catch the stoplight. I would not, I'm sorry.
It's just a reminder, you got a minute left.
Okay. I would direct your attention to the fact that the board has previously stated that a precedent has been set with walls being granted in this area. And I draw you to attention to one of the cases that you have in front of you, it is the one of 65 Oakland Avenue, the one that ends in 2546. And if you go to page 3, it states in there, with respect to the granting of the wall in that case, which was essentially along the property line, to that end, this request would follow in the same spirit and would not seem to be out of character in this neighborhood, given the fact that other similar requests have been approved, setting a precedent for approval of this request subject to conditions.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
I have a question. Yep. Your entrance is off of?
We are on Marston. We completely remodeled the house. We've been in the house for about a year, and the front of the house used to face Old Shell. Now it faces Marston.
My only concern with the Marston side, with where you've got a wall, is the line of sight.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the one area I would, if I were to consider approving this, that you set it back some. Make sure
Okay.
that you've got ample line of sight, as your father stated it, based on the traffic.
Now, we're planning on setting back that corner of Old Shell and Marston per code to maintain the line of sight.
I realize that, but I'm just saying, even on that, because you're talking about still being 3 feet off of that sidewalk, and there's trees through there too, right?
There are trees on that corner.
Yeah.
On that hard
So,
corner.
just from a line of sight, I would say that would be something to be coordinated with traffic.
Okay.
All right. Anyone else in the audience who wish to speak in favor of the application? Anyone in opposition? Any other questions of the board? All right. Well, I think most of us have been on this board long enough to have been involved in previous variances for the same area, for walls and pretty much anything on Old Shell. So we do have somewhat of a precedent. All right. Chair, entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
Second.
Have a motion to approve, second. Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Okay, motion carries. All right. Let me get my agenda back out here. All right, 4270 Cottage Hill Service Road. This is application 6146.
Yes. Good afternoon.
Name and address, sir.
My name is Alan. I'm Chastain. I'm the owner of LA Signs here in Mobile, 1591 Theodore. I'm here on behalf of my clients, Immediate Care of the South, Marty and Lynn McDonald, who are in attendance today.
And your application's been recommended for denial by the staff. Can you tell us why we ought to consider otherwise?
Yes, and as you might see in some of the pictures we submitted, I'm not sure if they're all there, but this particular location has a specific issue. When you're driving down Cottage Hill, from whatever direction you're going, as you're trying to locate Immediate Care of the South, the top portion or their sign that actually has their logo and the name of the business, what they are, is not visible due to trees being between the service road of Cottage Hill and Cottage Hill itself. You can see these trees in both directions, and we submitted some pictures what it looks like while driving there, that you can't see the sign properly. So my clients have been having some problems with their clients trying to locate their business. Imagine if you're a family and you got someone has, child has a broken finger or sickness and they're seeking immediate care, and you're trying to drive down Cottage Hill, but you can't see where their sign's at. And this has happened on several occasions to my clients, and has brought frustration to their clients and also to them, because they kind of have their hands tied at the moment. So what we wanted to do was use the existing changeable message board that's currently in place there. The manual changeable message board that's there is one you got to change with the pole and the stick. We wanted to take that down, put in a smaller sign, LED sign, as you see there in the picture. And with this LED sign, they can actually put the name of their business on there and the times that they're open, which is important for people who live around the community to know when your urgent care is open and closed, and also to show some different services that they provide. We know that the city of Mobile won't cut down the trees in that area, and I don't really think anybody wants them to, because it actually complements the area. So this seems like a solution that could help both the business and be able to communicate properly to their potential clients. From what I understand, the reason it was denied is because there is a 300-foot buffer zone between this actual sign and 5 residential properties that are located within 300 foot of this sign. The first location that's there is across the street, and it's actually Cottage Hill Baptist Church. And we submitted an email to them explaining what Immediate Care would like to do, the natural things that happen when you have an illuminated sign there, like an LED sign, and what their opinion was about it. And we submitted that in the documents when we submitted for the variance that Cottage Hill Baptist Church has no problem having an electronic message center for Immediate Care. They have no problem with it because they actually have one themselves. So there's already one across the street. This one will be on the opposite side of the street. So the other 4 residences that are within 300 feet of the sign are on Unestra Drive, which is to the west of the property. You can see there. Those 4 residences there, the fronts of the house face Unestra Drive. They each have backyards. In their backyards, you can see in the picture there, there's plenty of space. Before they get to their east property line, some of them have different structures. And we submitted in some of the pictures so you can see what this looks like in person. There is an 8-foot tall fence running across the whole top of this property line. So that blocks the view of the existing pylon sign. There's many trees growing up way above this fence line there that blocks the view. There's bushes there as well, and there's one large business, Big Time Diner, which is right across the street, and you can see it there. Big Time Diner's there, and it blocks the view of the sign, and I'm not sure if you can see it there, but I can see it on the picture there. The sign there it is right there. That's where the sign's currently located. So Big Time Diner, with the trees and the 8-foot tall fence, block a lot of that view from the residences there. So I actually got on Unestra Drive and I walked around that whole area looking between the houses to see if we can see the pylon sign from there, and I could not see it. So in our opinion, respectfully, we believe that the residences here, those 4 residences and the church across the street, will not be directly affected by my clients having a red LED message center installed on their sign. It was mentioned in the details that we did apply for a permit 4 years ago, which was approved by the City of Mobile for actually having an LED sign there. But shortly thereafter, the City of Mobile amended their sign ordinance to include a 300-foot buffer zone for residences, which is what we're facing now. So at that time it was approved, but at that time also my clients were opening another location in Foley and they could not act upon actually putting that there. But it has been a consistent problem for years for the clients unable to find them normally. So the problem has come up again and now they're trying to address it. So with this 300-foot buffer zone, the only difference between then and now is this buffer zone we're dealing with. And we feel like based on the information we provided that the residences really wouldn't have a problem having the sign there, wouldn't interfere with their normal lifestyle or the LED lights impacting their windows and things of that sort.
So the benefit, your hardship is that the overgrowth or the story of the trees along Cottage Hill obstruct the pylon sign from Cottage Hill, correct?
Yes, the top portion of the pylon sign, yes.
So another option would be to have a lower monument sign.
Yes, when we consider that, we looked into that situation, and there's even a greater problem in doing that. If you take that current sign as it is and you lower it down, if you can pull up one of the other maps there, that actually you can see the street. You can see some of it there, Oak Circle Drive West. If a car is trying to pull out of Oak Circle Drive West onto the service road of Cottage Hill, that sign will block a good portion of their view, which creates a safety concern. So that we definitely don't want to have any accidents caused due to a sign there. And plus a sign that size, there you can see it there too a little bit. You can see oncoming traffic there if they were coming that way. That sign is pretty large, and bring it down like that, it may not look too good cosmetically.
I've utilized this facility with my family, so, but to be honest with you, from Cottage Hill I was able to see which facility it was because it's also on the building, which you can see below.
Yes. Yeah, and we looked at that too. And you're right, on the building there is where it says Immediate Care of the South, but with this particular location, The trees do obstruct the pylon sign, which is usually the first sign that people look for when looking for a business. They see the pylon sign or the sign out there by the road. And their business is not right on Cottage Hill. There's trees, a service road, and then their property line, and then you get to the building. So this is why they've been having phone calls and complaints from clients that they can't get proper view of their building there.
Any questions of the board for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman?
Mr. Metcalf?
Bert, if you drew a line from the existing sign over to the first residence, or the first residential property, what's that distance?
I don't know. I don't have the ability to measure with what I have before me.
I do, sir. I have that information here. It's 267 feet.
Okay.
And I got that off the City of Mobile's website.
Okay,
maps.
now, is that 267 running down west on Cottage Hill, or is it as the crow flies from there to there? How is it?
It's and I have a picture of it here, but it's 267 feet from the actual sign itself to running parallel with the service road to the first property line it runs into, and that is the closest it gets to the signs, 267 feet. After that, the farther you go a little bit north on Unessa Drive, the distance gets a little bit farther away from the sign.
So if you ran on a tangent from the sign northwest to that way, do you know what distance that is? Any idea?
I do, sir. It's the fourth corner.
You measured.
Sorry, the fourth property, the northmost point is at 300 feet.
Okay, because I do think that the restaurant does provide pretty significant buffer between those. So that's why I was curious about the distance. So really, it's 267 feet running parallel, running west from the sign to the northeast corner of the first residential property.
Yes, that's right.
Well, I guess southeast corner. Okay. All right, thank you.
Any further questions? Any further questions of the board?
Yeah, but is there any assessment made for the kind of businesses like the emergency care and any? It doesn't matter.
No, sir, and this goes into some of what was discussed at the meeting with the consultant preparing the new ordinance. We cannot consider content, just like it was discussed. You can't consider gasoline pricing as something you feel should be allowed. We can't consider content. It strictly has to be the sign itself. I did find in the staff report where if you do a straight line measurement from the sign to the property line through the buildings, because it does say through the building regardless, it's 200 feet. Yes, sir.
Okay. No, excuse me. Any further questions of the board?
Mr. Chairman, I have a question for staff.
Proceed.
The applicant mentioned a sign across the street at the church. Does that predate? Okay. Thanks.
Okay. Anyone in the audience in favor of the application? Anyone in opposition, if you will? Sir, if you'll have
Sure.
Step to the side. Name
I'm
and
Dr.
address.
McDonald, 4270 Cottage Hill Road, and I certainly appreciate you gentlemen agreeing to listen to our case. I'm sorry to add to your burden, but I appreciate you.
Is there anything additional that you would add in support of the variance request, hardship-wise?
I think he said it.
Okay.
You know, I've had numerous problems with patients trying to find us. They'd be in a dire way, and they have trouble finding us coming up Cottage Hill Road. I want to make it easier for them to find us, because when you get scared and you get your finger cut off, it's not that easy. That's the reason for the request.
Okay. You have something to add as well? Your name and address, please.
Lynn McDonald, 4270 Cottage Hill Road. We also have a lot of out-of-town people, and they don't really look at our building that's set way off, and Cottage Hill is so busy now, it's just packed, and that would be a great place for us to put our address on there and a quick reference for out-of-town people and everybody else when somebody has chest pain or whatever, they are in a panic. So it would really help them. Sometimes they call us and they can't make time. We close at 8 o'clock and they say, you know, I got lost. So it would really help with that.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate it.
Mr. Chairman?
Yes, Mr. Metcalf.
Can you recall, or staff, a situation where I know that the board historically has been pretty firm on these. I do recall one, which was Ryco Signs, and we approved that because the sign faced I-65, but residential property was behind it. I do remember that one, but I'm trying to recall if the board ever approved anything that was similar to this situation here.
We've had 2 churches that I know that we've denied because of the distance. One of them twice. They came back 6
That
months
was on
later.
Azalea?
Azalea, and then we've had one over off of Cody. And then the one you're referring, I think, is Highway 90, or Government, which was the motorsports.
Yeah.
And that was with the golf course backing up to it, but it was zoned R1.
There was an instance for a church on, I guess it's Grelot, that had an existing digital message board that they wanted to replace, and they were within the distance of residential across the street, but the board did approve that request.
Yeah.
And did we also not deny Bebo's at the new Bebo's?
Yes.
Yes, you did, across from South Alabama.
So
thank you.
You understand we have to consider precedent. The hardship has to be clear for us to consider a variance. And as staff stated, we can't take into consideration what's on it. You're saying the name and other things that are associated with the service, but we have to look at it strictly from a zoning requirement.
Yeah, may I make a reply
yes,
to that concern?
please.
Sure. So when it comes to urgent cares, they're just like hospitals. They're not like gas stations or restaurants. As was stated previously by Lynn here, when people are searching for this, it can become a safety issue if they cannot locate this business. And because my customers will have their hands tied by their existing pylon sign, they really will have no other option regarding a sign unless it's something very massive, such as removing the entire sign and digging everything out, which is going to an extreme. So while we do respect the board's consideration to other previous instances here, we're asking for consideration in the view of an urgent care as it would be a hospital, that their clients need to be able to see them and they can have no other option regarding their business.
Yes.
I think that there's another thing to consider here to specifically address what you just did is the Supreme Court ruling that says that the content, I'm paraphrasing, but the content of the sign or the message cannot be considered. So even though we may be sympathetic to that and may totally agree with you, I think that we may be bound by a recent Supreme Court ruling that we can't ignore. I think that's the case. It's not, Mr. Anderson?
Good point on that.
You thinking on that one?
I'm sorry, whenever you were speaking about that topic, I thought you were trying to understand what type of information my clients would be putting on the message.
No, I'm not. I was trying to address or respond to what you were saying about the message, okay, or the content of the sign. So that was my, because staff feels pretty firmly about.
Yes, sir, and that was, I probably didn't go into enough detail when I was talking about what you heard from the consultant last week, but there was the recent Supreme Court ruling that said you cannot consider content of a sign and allow anyone something that is not allowed to everyone. So if you are looking at, in this case, information regarding an urgent care, you have to take that out of the equation.
Right.
It just
we could still grant a variance, it just would not be on that basis.
Right.
Right. So that argument, what we're saying, is something that we can't consider. We can consider other parts of it, but not that. And the purpose of me bringing it up is to clarify or to address what you just did.
Thank you for clarifying that. Now I understand more properly.
Okay. I think we've concluded our comments and questions. Any Anything of the staff before we proceed?
Mr. Chairman, one thing, and if we were to approve it, do we have the ability to limit the time and the brightness? I mean, or does that kind of come with it?
The brightness of a message board is going to be per what's in the zoning ordinance now. So there would be brightness limits, and it would be required to be dimmed in the evening. And there's also provision if there's some malfunction that it would freeze. Well, it cannot flash per the zoning ordinance. Now, it can have a changing message. So there are requirements that say how quickly a message can change and things like that. So there are already restrictions built into the ordinance.
All right, any further questions? Chair, entertain a motion. Don't all speak at once. Obviously, you see, we've got a little dilemma. I'll encourage one of our members to once again make a motion. All right, therefore the chair will make a motion to deny. Do I have a second? Okay, motion fails. I'll entertain a motion again. We've been in this position once before or more. Do we have any of the board members that are in favor of the application? With conditions or not? We're not making any headway here, guys.
Mr. Chairman, I will second your motion to deny.
Okay, I have a motion to deny, once again, and I have a second. Do I have any further questions? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Anyone opposed? Yes. Okay, I have 5 to affirm and 1 to oppose. Two. Well, let's do a hand count. All those in favor of the motion say aye. To deny. To deny. So we do not have sufficient vote, and then it fails anyway. And then the motion to approve would fail as well. Yeah. All right. Somebody has to make a motion to approve for us to proceed.
Mr. Chair, I move to approve.
I have a motion to approve.
Second.
Before we proceed, any conditions?
What are the staff recommendations? That it'd be a static sign, you know, no flashing.
Okay, any change of hours, it all be in compliance with the city?
The hours of operation?
Okay. And who made the second?
Right here, sir.
Okay. Mr. Davis? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion say aye.
Aye.
Okay, motion fails. Once again, therefore, the application is denied. Correct.
So there's two fails, or 2 denials, or 3 denials?
It denied.
Denied.
It was denied and because we don't have sufficient to approve a variance.
Okay.
So
motion
your
denied.
your applicant can, I guess, return in 6 months. Is that or appeal to circuit?
Okay. All right. So
Thank you for your time.
Thank you for your time.
And any appeal would need to be filed within 15 days of this date.
With the court?
Yes.
Okay. All right. Thank you, gentlemen.
All right. And our very last applicant, which I will have to recuse myself. This is GP Investments. Mr. Will Phillips is agent. Application 6147. Mr. Davis, I'll turn it over to you for control.
Oh, good afternoon, Mr. Davis.
Yes, good
Board,
afternoon, sir.
Thank you for hearing this.
Your name and address for the...
I'm Will Phillips, and this is our business, Green and Phillips, attorneys at law. GP Investments is the property investment business I own with Mr. Green. We own the properties of 50 North Florida Street, and this property, which is directly across the street from our old law office. This is the new building. And it's either 51 North Florida or 2550 Caso, I think is what we're calling that.
Yes.
Yes, sir. And anyhow, our architects, Bay Architecture, Jennifer Nichols is our architect. I brought a few additional pages. Did you pass those around? Okay, that had some sketches on there. What we permitted for 3 signs. Now, what we're talking about here is a logo. It's not the Green and Phillips injury lawyer sign. We went very minimal on signage, and it's actually built into the architecture of the building itself. It's built into the stucco. And what I brought in addition to what you previously had was something that showed somewhat of a faux window in that eave, and it's essentially the same size as this 4-foot by 4-foot logo. Now, as I say, this is not a sign attached to a building, so there was misunderstanding on our architect's part and our part that we thought that logo part and being the same size as the faux window would not require signage permitting. So anyhow, if you look at the other photos of Green and Phillips building, we have no signage on the street level or anywhere like that, no monument signs, no attached signs to the building. We ended up having the signage built into the architecture of the building. And so we were very much, we have permitting on the other 3 sides, and one of those being the like sign, 4-foot by 4-foot, that faces Florida Street. This side that faces west essentially just faces our parking lot and trees on the west end. And the only residences that can see this are just a handful, and not all of those are occupied that are on Casso Street. And since our application, I closed and bought one of those houses. But it's a beautiful building, if any of you haven't seen it. And we're very honored to be able to stay in Midtown. It was a real blessing to be able to acquire one dilapidated property at a time there across the street and to keep there. And we've been able to increase our employment. And it's not a hardship to, I mean, it's a hardship to us if we had to tear it down, because it would be many thousands of dollars, and it's in the architecture of the building to remove it. And it would look awkward in light of the Likes logo on the other side. And it's a very subtle logo, and we would very much like for the board to approve a variance and for that 4-foot by 4-foot logo. And it's essentially a eagle, it's a phoenix, it's something we've used for 20 years.
Counsel, you was about to say something, because I guess I'm really looking for some degree of clarity here before we move forward. You're saying that this would not be a 4th sign, but it would be in actuality a logo that's not attached to the building. Am I understanding you correctly on that?
No, it is our logo. It would be the exact same size of what you're seeing on that diagram in front of you in that eave, that it's a little faux window. Rather than the faux window, our architect at the time said the faux window can be the same size as your actual logo. And so that's what happened, and there was some interchange. Hey, they built the logo within, it's a hardened stucco shell. It's the building itself. It's not an affixed sign. It's quite an elaborate way of layering, and it's the shell of the building. And ICF, of course, is your very dense hard foam with voids of concrete and rebar, and then that's your outer clad. Right. But it would be it's the outer clad, and we thought the subtlety of that, and also not even having street level signs that could impede vision of turning in and off of Casso on Florida, and just improving that area there and the lighting at night and that kind of thing for people walking down Florida would be better if we were very subtle with the signage. So,
Mr. Chairman, if I can point out, I believe that on the north side of the building is where they actually have Green and Phillips spelled out on the side of the building. On the south side, I believe they also have it spelled out. And then on the east side facing Florida Street and on the west side facing the parking lot, they have the G and P symbol with the one on the east side being illuminated, but the one on the west side is not illuminated. So they're requesting approval for this fourth sign, which is the GNP logo, and that is the matter before you.
Okay, thank you, sir. Any discussion or questions from the board for the applicant?
Mr. Chairman,
Yes, sir.
move for approval.
Second.
Move properly seconded. You heard it as stated in the conditions. All in favor?
Aye.
All in favor of the motion as stated?
Aye.
Opposes by the same, hearing none, so ordered, sir.
Thank you very much.
Yes, sir.
Please come by. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
We're
Very
excited.
nice
All that
building.
You've been doing on Florida Street. Y'all been busy, and we appreciate that.
Yes, yes. Very, very nice building. It enhances the area right in there next to CVS, and
Come by
it
and
looks
see
real
us.
good. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
See you later, Ms. Phillips. We have
Oh, I need to see you.
a couple other items. If you'll have a seat, Mr. Phillips, just for a second. We have two other items.
We're through.
Okay, we're done.
We're done. See ya.
Well, there's nothing listed on my agenda unless
Well,
it's...
we already approved the schedule, correct, Lisa? Have we already received approval on that? Okay, that's out behind
Yes,
us.
we do have an election of officers that will be occurring at the January meeting.
Good.
So
Okay.
everyone needs to be prepared for that.
Yeah, I'm sweating that
And
one.
Get your nominations in.
And then,
Mr. Anderson, did you want to just let them know about the appeal for Mr. Peebles?
Nothing's happening.
Yes.
Yeah, nothing.
just kind of refresh us, what case or applications we've denied have been
The
appealed?
only one that's still pending from this board would be the Temple Lodge on what street?
St. Francis.
Warren? That might sound right. It's where we denied, he's building a building, and he wanted 5 or 6 curb cuts from Warren Street. And that was denied. He appealed it to circuit court. He went ahead and got a building. We allowed him to have a building permit because he's going to build the building whether he's got 1 curb cut or however many he wanted. So the building's going up. We have no trial date whatsoever. Usually the court sets these pretty, within 5 months, but nothing from the court on this.
So we don't have any others. When did that one come up for appeal?
Which one?
The one you're referring to.
When did we decide?
When did that one come up for appeal? Because I don't remember that discussion.
Well, he did submit the appeal within 15 days of the board's decision. That was back in March, I believe.
Okay. I just, for whatever reason, I don't remember us having this one come up for
I think
discussion.
that's the only one that's pending, right? The other ones are, only other one would be, it's planning commission, that one's planning commission, that one's city council, so I think this one is just the only one.
Okay. Was there something else? I guess that's it for the moment. Sorry about the trouble back and forth with that one. I'm sure we all have our opinions. All right.
No, I just wanted a motion made so we could.
Yeah, I know. We
have some finality to it.
Yeah, I
So that we got
apologize.
some backbone.
Apologize for missing the workshop, but I had to be on campus.
Well, you had been at the one the day before
Yeah.
for the ZTAC. It was not maybe as detailed, but it was very similar, just giving the board the overview of where we are, what's going on. I think it was overall a good meeting.
I have one thing which I have yet to talk to them about, and it hasn't happened recently, but at times we get applications that really need to go to planning first, and it seems to be backwards. Are we going to address that problem? Because the flow of those was part of the discussion in some of the technical advisory meetings.
Well, there's, and Doug, correct me if I'm wrong, but, there's not a lot that can be done to stop that. Anyone can file an application for a variance from any requirement of the zoning ordinance.
And it has to come on the agenda within X number of days, so.
So even if
it's
they've
hard
got
for us to
planning that-
control that to a large degree. We can advise them, or the staff can advise them, but
which we usually do.
We can't require.
It just seems like some of the more controversial ones, we ended up getting saddled with them first before the planning should have seen them.
Well, and sometimes that is intentional on the applicant's part.
Yeah. Yeah, I suspected so.
You know, there are going to be, I think, some similar to the one today that come before you for the screening and masking, because they really should go to the Consolidated Review Committee before they come here, so the CRC can review it and give you some guidance maybe on yes or no, or why they approved or didn't. But this one didn't. We have a couple of others that I know are going to be coming before you without going to CRC first. We can't make them.
I think it would, that's a good point. I think that would help, especially in this kind of situation. Well, they're all downtown. If I'm sitting in your position, I would want some input from the historical community, because they're the ones that really have the large investment in this area. I think it'd be good if we could, you know, they come to y'all without going to CRC, hold it over until they do.
Well, and that happens at Planning Commission frequently, where the Planning Commission will, not necessarily CRC, but where there's neighborhood opposition or something to that effect, the Planning Commission will hold it over until they do have some type of neighborhood meeting or meeting with whatever body or committee or entity is involved.
My time with the technical advisory group so far, the biggest thing I pick up out of it is that your group will have more discretion on some of the applications and some of the issues, which should eliminate some of the variances that we have to see.
We are hoping very much that will occur. One of the other things that we're hoping will occur is that there may not be as many things coming to even the CRC because of how the proposal is to modify the Downtown Development District Code.
It's you know, most of the stuff we get here are sign variances. Is that going to be changed at all, the sign ordinance? To where it would take some pressure off this group?
I will say this. I know that it will be looked at in much more detail. The city council or some of the city council members have requested a special meeting between them and the consultant to discuss signs in particular. So
the other thing I noticed in reviewing it is a lot more clarity with the non-conforming.
yes, sir, and that will help a lot as well.
Yeah.
You know, another big thing that's changing is the planned unit development, which the board doesn't really get involved in, but
that goes away, doesn't it?
It goes away as we know it today. It will become more of what traditionally other cities do for planned developments, and that is that it becomes its own district on the map because there is some unique feature to it that doesn't allow it to really fit within any of the other districts and allows for some negotiations, if you will, between the developer and the city to make the best product on that property.
Okay. Any other questions of the board? Motion we adjourn? Second? All those in favor? Aye. All right, see y'all.